Is this turning into maybe a near-death experience? Possibly. Does this add to the adventure? Absolutely.
Hey everybody, it's your favorite psychology teacher. Let me ask you something. Just a little something something. Do you like being slapped? Do you like being choked? How about biting? Would you be interested in some knife play? If you said yes to any of these, please seek counseling. You may indeed suffer from a paraphilia. A paraphilia is basically any group of disorders in which unusual or bizarre fantasies or behaviors are necessary for lectual excitement and must persist for at least 6 months. Alright, so for today's lesson we will be looking at Midari Ikishima from Kakegurui. What's that? Did you just ask why? Well...
Yes, this is the feeling. I'm alive. I'm still alive. This rush.
Okay, so Autassassinophilia is a form of paraphilia in which lectual arousal and the achievement of orgasm are facilitated by the fantasy or belief that one is in danger of being killed. This may include the individual staging a lectual encounter characterized by extreme masochism with the real potential of his or her own murder. In simple terms, the idea of being killed is what turns you on. This is what I believe Midari has, and because it is never specifically stated in the show, let's run through some examples together, okay? Exhibit A.
Beautification officer, it's my duty to stop you. Listen, if you need it that bad, I'll do it with you. Although...
So right here, she's stopping a leap. Sounds great, right? Wrong. What proceeds to occur is just Midari's way of trying to get off. She gives this guy 2 ultimatums. The first being, she shoots, and if it's blank, she gets leaped. And you're probably like, okay, that's weird, but maybe she wants a 1 in 6 chance of shooting him. But then she offers to let him pull the trigger, switching the roles. Do you see what's wrong here? She makes one offer in which she's likely to lose and be leaped, but then she makes the deal even harder on herself by giving him the option to shoot her instead. The guy's consequences only change positively, but her chances of a fatal outcome increase. We can see that she's excited over the idea that she's gambling away her body and more specifically, her life. Even though she explains the situation as if she would just be hurt, she's also smart enough to realize there's a real chance of her dying, even if it's just blood loss. Exhibit B. In this scene, Midari challenges Yumiko to a card game, and of course, they won't be playing for money. Midari makes the game a literal life or death game. The winner of each round gets to shoot at the other, but the interesting part is that Midari allows any amount of bullets to be placed in the chamber, meaning there could be a 100% chance of being shot by Yumiko if Yumiko really wanted to. She literally forces Yumiko to play this game, which again, she has a real high chance of dying. So, you know, take that as you will, I guess. Exhibit C.
Yes, this is the feeling. I'm alive. I'm still alive. This rush.
You already know. I don't have to say anything else. You know what you just saw. This last exhibit is just to prove the point that she is lecturally attracted to the endangerment of her life. Alright, so if you're like me, you're probably wondering,
hey yo, what the fuck?
why is the only thing you can really say to this kind of thing the only question you have? I mean, we don't see monkeys going around flogging each other for mating. Maybe bonobos in a few years, but whatever. Anyways, as it turns out, it is incredibly hard to explain why people have fetishes because there are so many of them and of such different varieties. For example, someone with a fetish for dripping candle wax is definitely not gonna have the same backstory as the fetish towards corpses. However, when it comes to these paraphilias, you know, these really out-of-pocket interests, there are 2 things professionals like to look at: childhood events and media consumption. This is because our brains are wired to protect our lives and body. This is why your hand will instinctively move if you burn it. To override your brain's desire to survive, there has to be something extreme going on, right? Well, suffering lectural abuse as a child is normally thought to cause the individual to become a shut-off and not lecturally active. However, it can also cause them to have disturbances of desires and arousal, and orgasm may result from the association between lectural activity, violation, and pain. Survivors are more likely to have had 50 or more intercourse partners and engage in risk-taking behaviors. Now, on the more common and expected side, Lorne consumption plays a huge role in the fetish development of young people. Studies have shown that Lorne, mild or aggressive, does increase violent tendencies, more so verbally but also physically to a large degree. Now it is important to note that these findings were more prominent in men but can still apply to women, just depends on the role an individual wants to play in the act. Now, out of these two, I would say Midari is more likely to just be a violent Lorne consumer. The audience doesn't get a backstory of her childhood, but Midari doesn't display any signs of someone who might have been abused, especially when she offers up her body to be used by force. Now, this next clip mostly supports my theory, and I would say that Midari is probably into the BDSM community on the side of being a masochist.
You're a wild one, aren't you? You're a freaking pervert! President!
Impressive.
Like I mentioned earlier, statistically speaking, people who engage in this kind of behavior run very high risk of permanent damage to their body or just death altogether. The audience already sees Midari go through this in the show when she loses her eyeball to the school president. Self-inflicted, I might add. But what would happen to her later on in life? Well, because of how intense she is with all her gambles, I would say Midari is likely to die in the future. A real-life example of this is a woman called Sharon Lopatka. I won't go into detail of her case, but she did eventually satisfy her erotic fantasy to be killed. And I do believe that Midari is going to suffer the same fate because this is the reality of Autassassinophilia. Hey, you've reached the end of the video. Please subscribe if you want more psychological and anime content. Thank you so much, and have a good night.